Our next speaker is Steve Sarich. He is the executive director of the Cannabis Action Coalition based in Washington State, defending horticulture, industrial, medical, religious, scientific, and social uses of cannabis in Washington State. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Steve Sarich.
Hello. Well, I guess it's good afternoon out there. Well, I've been a medical cannabis activist here for 12 years now. That's 120 years in dog years, which is what it feels like. And because there's never any playbook when we started this, so everything was done by trial and error. You had to pick it up to find out if it was hot. And so over the 12 years, we've learned quite a bit. And hopefully we'll be able to share that not just today, but we're looking to put together a national database as a solution for training activists all over the country. One of the biggest problems we have is people do not know the subject well. If you don't know the subject well, you create a myriad of problems for yourself. First of all, law enforcement can get up there and they can lie and lie and lie. They've been lying for 77 years. They've been saying that it's dangerous and it would scramble your brain. But if you get caught misspeaking one time, they will club you with that. And so you really need to know the topic. So we're going to try to set up just a knowledge base. It will be absolutely free for all activists to share across the country. That brings us to the first thing you have to learn how to do. One of the mistakes we made is because we're so close to this and because we do this every day. I've been doing this day and night for 12 years, so I know the topic. You can't trick me on a question on cannabis, but don't assume, and we've made this mistake numerous times, don't assume that those you're talking to, especially legislators and policy leaders, are going to have any clue what you're talking about. It's going to take a while to educate them. And so we're going to try to provide you with some tools for that over the next year. One of the other things we've made a mistake about is you cannot go to a legislator and ask them to give them some ideas and ask them to write a good bill. First of all, in most states that I'm aware of, the legislators themselves don't write the bills. They turn it over to someone in the House or the Senate committee or the code revisor's office, and they actually do the bill writing, and they have no idea what they're doing. So if you don't know how to write a bill, learn, because otherwise you're going to end up with something that is not what you want. And that brings us to another topic. You will hear the perfect is the enemy of the good. That is a sales technique to get you to accept something that you really shouldn't be accepting. They did that with I-502. The idea that pass whatever now, even though it has serious flaws and we'll fix it later, is a trap. We've had medical cannabis here in the state of Washington for 17 years now, and it has gotten worse every year. And now for the second year in a row, they're trying to kill medical marijuana while other states are trying to add new medical cannabis laws. Do not believe for one moment that we are on a downward, on the downhill slope of this fight. All we're doing now is we're fighting Prohibition 2.0. The national organizations, and this is going to piss some people off, but I found that all of the national organizations, whether it's NORML, MPP, Americans for Safe Access, are not our friends. They have their own agendas, and all of them have sold us out. Especially MPP has not been a factor here in the state of Washington, though they have been elsewhere, but certainly NORML and Americans for Safe Access have been working to kill medical here in the state of Washington. In fact, the head of Washington NORML, Kevin Oliver, who's on their national board, has a 502 grower processor license, so he has a financial stake in making sure that medical is dead here. So anyway, what we hope to do, and again, this will be my last year as a full-time medical cannabis activist here. I'm now the president of the Washington State Hemp Commission, and so I'm trying to get hemp established as an industry here. And I have to tell you, law enforcement is even fighting us on that. They tried to pull a cute trick the other day, and they put in THCA along with THC as THC concentration. So if you had 0.3% hemp, they would now be adding in the THCA. So if a farmer planted certified 0.3% hemp, it would come up and be tested at 0.4%, and they can take away the farmer's property. So this is where good bill writing comes in. If you've got that skill, you can fix those things, and you can fix them rather quickly. So I showed up at a hearing with the bill in hand, rewritten, and they went along with it. Otherwise, we probably would have lost the hemp bill in Washington this year. One of the biggest problems you're going to have is raising money, and you may not have nearly as much trouble as I've had, because we've been strictly medical here. Every move towards legalization here has been I-502, which is just another scheme in the new plan on prohibition, which is to have the government control the growing and the sales of cannabis, and to tax it and regulate it like alcohol. I think it was MPP or ASA who came up with that ridiculous idea. But what we need to do now is move on to real legalization, a real open market, and we've got a real opportunity at this point. We had a sea change in the last month. The feds have said they are not going to come into medical marijuana states, and the next day they decided that President Obama met with Indian tribes and decided that the Indian tribes can grow and sell marijuana all across the country. So that's pretty much the death of I-502 here, because the Indians will be selling $5 a gram marijuana, while the recreational stores are selling $20 to $30 marijuana, and they simply can't compete. The forces that be here are trying to say, well, it's not fair to those recreational stores that the dispensaries get to sell it so cheaply. But we've been here for 17 years. Everybody knew that we don't tax medicine in the state of Washington. We don't tax prescription medication. We've got another law that says you cannot tax any herbal medication, one of the few laws in the country. Still, they're trying to wipe us out with the argument that it's not fair for these as competition. That won't fly now. They cannot wipe out the black market with $30 a gram marijuana. What they're trying to do now is they're trying to ramp up the war on drugs again. They want to spend $1.25 million hiring more police to go out and bust medical grows, to bust black market grows. Unfortunately now, we will have the Indian tribes growing and selling here, and I'm consulting with them. And they are ready to step up and do the right thing. They've asked me for a list of products that patients need and want, and for the price structure to go with those products. So that's probably the end of the government model that 502 laid down. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Certainly. Am I on? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. The first question, great discussion. As you know, I have a lot of respect for your work in the state of Washington personally, and you have actually educated me on some of the matters going on. The first question is from our jury nullification representative in Chatwing from Fiji. It's a little lengthy, but here's the gist of it. Any suggestions for reaching out to marijuana legalization activists to work together on jury nullification education? I've had some success, but there seems to be a subset of marijuana legalization folks who won't touch jury nullification. Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, we haven't experienced that here. I mean, I'm always happy to work on jury nullification. I think it's a good alternative. when all else fails. And but I think you have to understand that there's a division in this country between uh, some groups that claim they want legalization and the medical community, and they're happy to attack the medical community, thinking that it's going to get them somewhere further with legalization. And I suspect that it's the people uh, who are who have a particular agenda that would not support something like jury nullification, because I don't see any reason not to support it.
Certainly. The one of the things that you and I have discussed that I want you to talk about is when you mentioned the black market and the recreational versus the medical marijuana. I can't even believe we're saying that out loud, but the recreational marijuana versus the medical marijuana movement or the controversy. There is a glut of marijuana not being sold. Is that not correct? In the residential, in the recreational marijuana side in the state of Washington, you have a
Yeah,
bunch.
matter of fact, if GM failed to sell 80% of their cars this year, or if wheat farmers in Washington failed to sell 80% of their wheat, it would be considered a major failure and catastrophe for both of those people. They have failed to sell 80% of the marijuana, recreational marijuana grown in the state of Washington this year. And that comes from two things. One, they grew swag. They grew stuff that these were first time growers. They didn't know what they were doing. A lot of it has got powdery mildew issues. I talked to someone yesterday that's buying 7 ovens because what they're going to do is turn all of it into concentrates, and then there's going to be a glut on the market of concentrates because they have between 25 and 30,000 pounds that have not been sold. But the problem is marijuana, unlike just about any other substance, has held a firm price more than gold, more than wheat futures, more than orange juice, more than anything over the years. And the price has gradually gone down, but it's been very, very stable around here at around $10 a gram. You can buy it at $5 a gram here. It got up to $54 a gram in the recreational stores. Their only customers are the people who are my age, who when they stopped smoking cannabis years ago because they took a job at a company that did drug testing, and now they've retired, and now they can smoke again, and they go in and they try it, and then once they buy their $30 gram, then they go out and buy it where all the friends buy it. The other market that they've, and this is coming from the I-502 stores, their other market is tourists. Well, I'm sorry, but in Eastern Washington, there aren't a lot of tourists. So they're sitting on all that marijuana, and they think by forcing patients into that market that we will go in and spend $20 or $30 a gram, and that will just never happen. And patients hate these people so much for trying to kill medical. We will go to the black market any day rather than go to one of these stores.
Certainly. Question from Ed Lee in the chat wing. Do you have any advice for activists trying to get local cannabis legislation passed either through ballot initiative or putting pressure on local elected officials?
Well, okay. Here's my feeling about initiatives, and it depends on what state you're in. California has got a strong initiative system. So does Colorado. We've got a very weak system here. There, they actually add the initiative to the Constitution, so it's much harder to remove it. Here, they made a change to I-502 2 months after they passed it. Here, it just takes a 2/3 majority vote in both houses to make a change in the first 2 years. After that, it's a simple majority vote. So initiatives are weak in some places, and in some places they're almost impossible to get passed. My policy on initiatives here in Washington is I don't care how good your initiative is, I will not read it unless you tell me that you have the money to go out and hire signature gatherers, because it's a waste of everyone's time and energy, and it wastes activist time. If you don't have the money to hire signature gatherers, you're just not going to get enough signatures to get a bill passed. Now, there are local initiatives in some states. We have some local initiatives here, and very often that's a good way to pass a local initiative. as far as leaning on your local representatives, you really have to do that on a state level, and you have to start educating them. The mistake we make is to think that they know anything about the topic whatsoever. I'm in a constant state of re-educating these people just because we know it, because it's so close to our heart and so close to our lives. We kind of think that they know what's going on, and they really don't. So education's the first place you have to start with that.
What do you feel? Are the most important distinctions between, particularly in your state, that would fix the medical marijuana, recreational marijuana controversy? What is the fix that you would like to see?
Well, there's two or three fixes that have to be made, and this goes for other states too. If you're going to pass legalization or you're going to pass a medical marijuana law, take it out of Schedule 1 in your state Controlled Substances Act. We failed to do that when we passed the medical law 17 years ago. They failed to do that when they passed I-502. They could have added that in there then. Again, this is the argument, well, let's pass it, we'll fix it later. You will never fix it later. You have to get that idea out of your head. Do not listen to people who tell you that. 17 years, it's been a fight every year since we passed it. So first you have to unschedule it. What I tried to do is try to get unscheduling passed here in the state of Washington this year, but there is such an anti-medical, pro-cop lobby here. The police lobby really controls the legislature in the state of Washington. It's really pretty disgusting, considering we're supposed to be a liberal state. But that's the first thing you need to do is you need to unschedule it, and then you can actually force the federal government. You can force the federal government to apply the Schedule 1 test. If they have to apply the Schedule 1 test, if you sue them to do it, they will back down, because if they have to apply the Schedule 1 test, one of the three issues is it says it has no accepted medical use in the United States, and the Department of Health and Human Services asked for in 1998, the year we passed the law here, and received in 2003 a patent on the medical use of cannabis. So they can't win that issue. That's the first thing that's got to happen in any state, is to take it out of your local Controlled Substances Act. What's got to happen here is I-502 has to fail, because and it will fail. It's bound to fail, because you can't tax something at 25, 25, 25, and 10 and expect it to wipe out the black market. And if it doesn't wipe out the black market, and you can't rekindle the war on drugs and try this all over again, something that hasn't worked for 77 years and $1 trillion later, it will fail. And we have never reduced a tax in the state of Washington's history. So that's why I say it has to fail. It's got to die of natural causes, because the legislature is never going to remove all those onerous taxes. If they would just charge a sales tax, it might work out and be successful.
In the state of Washington, you have the Liquor Control Board that is in charge of these industries. Is that not correct? How is that?
Yes, we spent $22 million passing an initiative to fire the Liquor Control Board because they could not run a profitable liquor monopoly. They were losing money running a liquor monopoly. I'm sure that Al Capone is laughing somewhere at this point. Sure. So we fired them, and then 502 passed, and now they put them in charge of the state marijuana monopoly, and they're doing exactly the same thing with that. They're over-regulating it. They change regulations every other day. They violated countless laws. They are probably the most corrupt agency in the state of Washington ever, and everybody knows that. And that's why they handed it to them, because they are in bed with law enforcement. They've gone out and spent millions now on new undercover police cars. They're getting ready to start their own Elliott Ness squad, and they're going to go out and bust patients this year.
That's horrible. So in closing, we have a few minutes left. What would you like to see happen? I mean, just give me the goals from an activist standpoint and from a law standpoint. You mentioned some of it, but what do you want to see people doing, and how you want the discussion to go from here?
Well, eventually, okay, I mean, I didn't support 502 because, and they called me a prohibitionist. Normal continues to call me a prohibitionist because I didn't support 502. I didn't support 502 because it wasn't legalization. What we need is real live legalization. Legalization, by definition, legalizing anything requires that you remove all of the laws that made it illegal in the first place. So I'm completely for real legalization. I'm just not for what we've got now. We need an open market. If it's going to be legal, it needs to be an open market. This whole idea of, well, and people have been convinced, well, you've got to give them some tax money. They aren't going to pass it if you don't give them some tax money. The second you open that door to anything other than a sales tax, and not even a sales tax on medicine, if you just have sales tax on recreational, um, be very, very careful because that tax is going to continue to rise. But to add excise taxes, sin taxes to it, that will always be a failure. What we've got to do is quit passing bad laws. Do not accept a bad law. The idea of perfect being the enemy of the good may work in some cases where people don't go to jail. But if the law is not perfect and doesn't keep people from going to jail for using cannabis, you have to oppose it. They keep talking about wanting clear, bright lines. And you should understand that that's a lie. That is exactly the opposite of what they want. Law enforcement works in the gray areas. So we want clear, bright lines. We want real live legality that the cops can't interfere with. And that's got to be our goal. And I don't see MPP or Normal or ASA, any of them proposing model legislation that will do that. So I hope that activists around the country will pick up the ball. And I'm hoping we can help them do that and pass really good legislation and not be taking George Soros's money and settling for something less.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Steve, for appearing today at the first ActCon conference. Really appreciate it. Love your content, and thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, happy to be here. Thanks.